welcome back. Let me introduce to you my money makers for the week. So while they're not my first choice of bike, I don't own one or plan to own one, urban commuters or hybrid bikes are by far in the highest demand when it comes to selling bikes on marketplace here on the coast. Now I'm lucky enough to live in a part of the world where if you really want to, you can just about cycle to anywhere that you need to go. So with thousands of tourists here on working visas every year, a large elderly population, the growing interest in just general health and fitness, the fact that shops, parks and sporting facilities are on your doorstep in every suburb, hybrid bikes are an extremely popular option if you want a cheap and convenient mode of transport. If we're talking purely from a profit standpoint, urban commuters are definitely my highest earners. Sometimes not always purely for the profit either, but also because they sell so quickly. So here I have 4 great examples of how a bit of a cleanup and some good photos can make for an easy day's work. Like most bikes, we just start up the front. Now all I've done is just swap the bell out to a bell that fits the diameter of the handlebars down near the grips. That's basically it. Then it was just a matter of a very minor adjustment to the barrel screw here on the rear derailleur. I think it was like half a turn. This bike here ended up being a little bit of a headache, but we started off with good intentions. All I did was just move the bell from the right-hand side to the left. Purely personal preference. I just think it's easier to flick the bell with the hand that isn't changing gears constantly. Once I got to adjusting the front and rear derailleur, you'll see in a second, and I don't know how I didn't notice this to start with, but there was a major reason why it wasn't working, and it wasn't until the cable actually exploded out of the casing that I realized that both of them were completely stuffed. So yeah, this will be a bike for another episode. So while this bike was extremely dirty, it was in pretty good condition overall. You see here the rear derailleur cable didn't have a ferrule on the end of it and it was quite frayed. So while I would never cut a cable this short, I just cut the fray off the end and then just put a blue ferrule on the end of it to match with the anodized blue parts. I thought I was onto a winner with this light, however it is just AA batteries. It was rechargeable, but it was a little bit corroded inside, so I didn't bother keeping it on. And I also removed the reflector because it was just held on by some like scrap hardware, which looked a little bit sort of janky, and the bell was a bit rusty and didn't actually work. So we got rid of all that. I don't know about you, but I can nearly feel these grips through the screen. They were gummy and tacky and disgusting. Also, strangely, they were held on by 2 different sized Allen keys, which, I don't know, seems a bit odd, but that is what it is. So I've never actually seen handlebars like this either, and you'll see once I get the grips off, that they're actually pressed in, and there's like a piece of rubber or gel on the top, which, I mean, makes for a more comfortable ride. I don't know how structurally strong these handlebars would be though, but I guess they're suitable for what they're made for, which is just commuting around. And as far as fitting these grips, I didn't want to spray any hairspray or chemicals on top of that rubber. I didn't know how it would react, so I just whacked them on with with force, just slid them on and then just kept whacking the end until they were on correctly. And you see here, it's just disgusting. I was never going to sell a bike with these grips on there. Now just removal of this rear light bracket, and then it was just a matter of simply adjusting the rear derailleur just to make sure that the gear shifts was nice and smooth. This is just a bit of a before of the paint. It was actually quite baked in, all of this dirt, but we did manage to get a lot of it out. So that brings us to the final bike of the 4, and probably my favorite of all of them. However, it is the bike that needs the most amount of work. I initially picked this one up with the first bulk buy of bikes, so it really only cost me like $10 for this particular bike, which is a bargain. And it was one of the bikes that I was most excited for in that whole haul because I knew that the money was there to be made. So hopefully I can show it on camera, but the rims on this bike, both front and back, where the braking surface is, are actually really concaved and quite heavily worn. And also they're not very even the whole way around. So when I first got it, I thought, oh, maybe it's just a feature of the wheel. However, one side is like really concave, the other side not so much. There's patches where it's nearly folded over, and then there's patches where the rim is as it should be. So I know for a fact that they're not supposed to be like that. However, the tire, tube, and cassette are all in good nick. So I jumped onto Marketplace, not expecting really to find much and thinking maybe it's going to cost me a bit of money. And I ended up actually picking up some wheel sets for $20 in really good nick. They just don't have the cassette, and I'll be swapping the tubes and tires that are on this bike now onto those. It should be a relatively easy swap. The next thing is the grips on this bike are completely worn out. So they do have these little bullhorn attachments, which, I mean, they're pretty cool. I don't think I'll put them back on the bike just because they're scuffed up both ends. The grips that I'm gonna put on here are like the cheap ones that I've been getting from Pushies. Apart from that, the only other thing that I will address on the bike is the seat post. So the seat post on this bike, just like the hubs and a couple of the other black anodized pieces, have turned that golden color over time just from sitting in the sun. Now I have another bike that was out the back which needs a lot of work and is probably only good for parts, but it had a nice black seat post on it that is the same diameter. So I'll swap these seats over and put the new seat post in. Here we have the stock wheel that I've taken off, and this is the new wheel to go on. I have a matching set, front and rear. All I have to do is swap the cassette over, and then the rear is good to go, and swap the tubes and tires off of these wheels onto these ones. Also, one of the benefits of this aesthetically is that the bike is black and red, and these rims are black with red decals, similar to what the factory ones were. So yeah, I think these will even look better than the ones that were on there. We'll get the tires switched over and throw them back on. we go, 3 of the 4 bikes done. Now, unfortunately, as you would have seen, the outers on the giant gear cables have both split, so they're gonna need to be replaced, and just due to the color, I'm not gonna be able to match it, and I don't want them to look like only the gear cables are being replaced and not the brakes, so I'm just gonna go through, do the whole lot. It's not a cost that I really want to incur, obviously, but I should make it back out in the sale, no worries. So while this bike may look very similar to how it was when I first threw it up on the stand, the improvements that we've made are actually quite dramatic. So it has the new grips on there now, which cleans up the look of the front of the bike very well. The new seat post, being completely black and not this faded bronze color, has made a big difference to the look. The wheels themselves, as you would have seen, were in pretty horrible condition. So I didn't feel comfortable selling the bike with those wheels on it. Technically I could have, because there's probably a lot of people that wouldn't have even looked. They were nice and true, and you could stop when you pulled the brakes. So really, they were rideable. However, yeah, I felt a lot safer and more comfortable putting these newer wheels on it. And for the cost of $20, I mean, that was a great upgrade. The cassette swapped straight over, nice easy swap. So I've been through, I've given the bike some minor adjustments with the brakes and the gears. The wheel itself was dished perfectly. The gears might have just been slightly over from the last ones. It just took a quick turn of the barrel adjuster on the rear derailleur and they were back to being spot on. The front never changed and it already worked perfect, so that was great. All that's left to do now is to give it a really thorough clean and take some photos of it and list it. So with the 3 bikes that we currently have that we can wash and have ready for sale, we're in about $95 to $100. And I think the total sale price of these 3 bikes is gonna come in somewhere between the $600 to $700 mark. So I think we're gonna do pretty good out of these 3 bikes. I'll pull this one down off the stand, we'll get them out the front, I'll give them a proper clean, lube the chain, make sure that everything is still working correctly, get the tires pumped up, get some photos taken, and we can run through the breakdown of the costs and what I'm gonna list these bikes for. Now, I'm not gonna do like a full montage of all of the bikes getting cleaned. However, I did wanna get that clip outside of the bike to really show just how caked in the dirt was on some of these bikes. And even after washing this Avanti, you'll see that it looks like there's like chemical etching or something in the paint, but it was really not in a good way. So I normally polish bikes by hand with just a cloth and some compound. I picked up this foam attachment from the local auto store just to see if it would make my job any easier. And for these larger sections, especially on a bike that was in this bad a condition, it made my job so much easier. So I'm really glad that I actually picked this up, and you'll see just how much of a massive difference this makes from where we started. So while the Apollo didn't need too much work, this Trek did need a really good going over, and the paint on this actually come up really, really nice, really bright and shiny, and it got out a lot of the marks that I didn't think it would. Now, surely we can all agree that these look 100 times better than they did at the start of today. So I've taken each of these 3 bikes out around the block, and I've tested out the gears and I've tested out the brakes, and each one of them works flawlessly. So I don't think we're gonna have any trouble with selling these bikes. So let's go through each one of them individually. We'll do a breakdown of the costs and what I'm gonna list it for. So we'll start with the easiest one first, and that is this Apollo Allegro. This bike was already in pretty good condition. It was just very dirty. All we have had to do is peel a couple of the old ratty stickers off of it, give it a good clean, lube the chain, and give it some minor adjustments to the brakes and the rear derailleur. And now it is ready to go. So this bike here cost me about $20. I haven't had to put any money in parts. So, I mean, we could say that there's like $5 in, say, lubricant and cleaning products, I'm gonna list this bike for $200, and I mean, we'll see how we go. I think that the condition that it's in and the photos that I've taken of it, we should be able to get pretty close to that. Now up next, we have the Trek FX 7.3. So this bike, when it started, was probably the worst condition aesthetically. Being white paint, it had also gone a bit chalky from being so dusty and sitting so long. All of that had picked up grease and grime, and it was really baked into the paint. I gave it a good clean and gave it a really good polish especially on the larger surface areas, and it's come up looking really, really good. There are a few blemishes still in the paint and scratches, and I mean, there's only so much you can really do to enhance the look of the bike, but where it is from where it started is a massive difference. So this bike here, it also cost me $20. What I've had to add to this bike though is the grips. So it is looking like we're about to get some quite bad weather over the next couple of days here on the coast. So bad in fact that most places are actually going to be closed over the next 2 days, and that will include the post office. So ordering grips from Pushies, even though if I ordered them today, they would technically arrive here on Friday. If I did order them today, I don't think I would see them until sort of mid next week by the time everything catches back up. So with that in mind, I went out to Baringa Bikes in Aura and I would grab some of these grips here. They did cost $15, which is, I mean, it's a little bit more than what I would normally spend, but the convenience of being able to complete this today was worth the $5. And honestly, they are a great bunch of blokes there. Very kind, very great to talk to, and I would recommend that if you're looking for any parts, head out there to a proper community local bike shop, and they really know their stuff. So I definitely recommend going out to see those guys if you do need anything cycle-wise. And most of the flips that I do, I am pretty tight on budget because the profit margin isn't that big. However, with these bikes, the profit is going to be there. So I didn't mind going out there and spending that extra little bit of money. And I mean, it's well worth it to support local business. So with that being said, the bike has cleaned up incredibly well. And I mean, I'll have a look around. I'm pretty confident that I'm going to get at least $200 for this bike. I'll have a look online, see what there is listed. If there's nothing that's comparable, then I might push my luck and go for the $250 mark. So lastly, we have what is the most expensive bike of the day. However, by far my favorite bike of the day, the Avanti Giro, and it is the large size. So if I do get a chance to take any of these bikes out, it will definitely be this one. When I first got this bike, it was initially purchased with my first bulk lot of bikes. So this is the cheapest one of today, which it only cost me around $8 to $10. This was one of the major selling points from the photos. When I seen this bike in the photos, I knew that there was money to be made with this bike. However, once I got it home, I realized that the rims were completely cooked and the wheel sets needed replacing. I had to look through all the other bikes that I got, and there wasn't anything that I would consider suitable to swap onto this bike. So I jumped onto Marketplace, and a guy had these wheels here listed for, he had them originally listed for $50, then dropped them to $30. I made him an offer of $20 and he was happy to take that. So the grips that I put on here are the $9 grips of Pushies, which I just had a set laying around. Last time I placed an order, I ordered extra pedals and extra grips. And the last thing, it didn't really cost me money. However, it is a part of a bike that I have purchased with this lot of bikes, and that is the seat post and seat. So with the cost of the bike, the wheels, the grips, and a small allowance for the seat post and seat, we are in this bike about $50. Just like the Trek, I'll have a look to see what I can compare it to, but I think I'm gonna list this closer to the $300 mark, and we'll see how we go with it. I know that I'll get at least $200 for this bike. However, I'm not sure how far I can really push it. So I hope you enjoyed that quick flip of these three bikes. Now, unfortunately, the Giant won't be getting finished today. I'm not sure whether I'll make a video of myself redoing those cables or if I'll just quickly redo them and list it for sale, but either way, there will be an update to come on that bike. I'll list all these 3 for sale and we'll see how we go. Like always, I'll pin a comment at the top of the comment section, which will include the cost of the bike, the list price, and the sale price. Until the next one. We are out on the Advantage Euro and I've actually met up with Rudy, another rider on the Sunshine Coast. He reached out to me through one of the videos that I posted up here, and by the sounds of it, he's done some serious Ks on not only his e-bike but also his mountain bike, so I could be in trouble today. But we're headed out the way that I normally ride, and then we're going to take some roads that I actually haven't taken before. So we got to about 15 Ks in. Rudy had to make a pretty early exit, unfortunately. But he seems like a guy who has 1,000 stories to tell, and he's ridden a lot of interesting places, a lot more than me. So if I ever need adventure tips, he'll definitely be the person to speak to. But I'll be keen to ride again with him in the future. So yeah, hopefully we can plan an actual proper adventure ride sometime soon. And if anybody else is keen to come along, by all means reach out and we can make a day of it. Head out anywhere. I'm sure Rudy has a better idea than I do because I normally just ride the boring roads around the sunny coast. But yeah, keen for that. Right now I'm just gonna head home because I got school pickup this afternoon and I don't want to jinx myself, but it feels like I'm gonna have a pretty heavy tailwind on the way home for once. Normally I just ride out with a headwind and ride back with a headwind. So fingers crossed that the tailwind just carries me home. Done. That will do. God, I don't even know what I said to start with. I wish I wrote it down.